Hi, and welcome to the educational capsule called Physical Activity. My name is Adele Viscano, and I'm a physiotherapist at the Jewish Rehabilitation Hospital in Laval, and I will be accompanying you throughout this presentation. First, let us start off with the objectives of the presentation. We will first dive into the benefits and advantages of physical activity and discuss the disadvantages related to a lack of physical activity or a sedentary lifestyle. Then, we will address the challenges encountered when trying to be physically active, and I'm sure you can already think of a couple that you face regularly. Finally, we will end with ways of planning and integrating physical activity into your routine. At the very end, there is a video that nicely summarizes the points of the presentation, as well as gives you the perspective of individuals who have had a stroke. Note that the video's volume is louder than the rest of the presentation and that you will need to adjust the volume controls. Before it all, let us discuss lifestyle. Take a few moments to reflect on your lifestyle. Do you feel you live an active lifestyle? Do you often find yourself integrating active minutes into your routine, such as biking, walking, stair climbing, etc.? Do you train around lunchtime or maybe in the evenings? Or are you maybe a morning owl and prefer morning walks? Reflect. Perhaps you prefer catching up with friends through coffee and desserts or eating at restaurants. Perhaps you enjoy watching television. There is not one answer to these questions, and there are no right answers only. Keep in mind that your choices, though, do influence your lifestyle and can impact you tremendously. Now, we know that there are poor habits and that it is very easy to fall into bad lifestyle choices, such as TV binge watching, a sedentary lifestyle, and poor diet. We also know the more you are indoors for prolonged and repetitive periods, the more likely you are to overconsume food portions and consume junk foods, including sugars and processed foods. This in itself has direct consequences in our society. We have seen more physical inactivity rates and increases in junk food consumption or poor dietary choices, leading to an increase of obesity. In 2009, a research study conducted in the United States demonstrated the correlation between a sedentary lifestyle, obesity, and diabetes. The results were shocking. They noticed that there was a growing trend of being sedentary. Additionally, they noticed that the rates of obesity had increased to include 20% of the population in more than 3/4 of the United States, with certain states seeing increasing obesity rates for equal or more than 30% of their population. That being said, with the increase in sedentary lifestyles and obesity, we can understand why there have been increases in adults aged more than 20 being diagnosed with diabetes. We must also keep in mind that increases in hyperglycemic indices also mean increased chances of developing cardiovascular conditions and complications. Now, I know some may say yes, but this is in the United States and we are Canada and it may not be the same, and that is true, but we are still very much alike. However, let us take a closer look at the situation in Laval. If we look at our clientele of patients who were diagnosed with a stroke in the 2017-2018 period, we noticed that 84% of our clientele already had hypertension prior to their stroke. Additionally, 64% of our clientele had an unhealthy cholesterol level and 42% were diabetic. To continue, 14% of our clientele had a history of smoking prior to their stroke, and 11% of our patients met the criteria that corresponds to obesity. Now, this is not the case for everyone. There might be some of you listening who were perfectly healthy prior to your stroke, and that these factors are of no concern to you. It is true that some strokes are due to unknown causes in healthy individuals. There's also more and more research showing that stress can be a big factor and contributor to having a stroke as well. However, for the majority of the strokes, these common risk factors are often detected prior to having the stroke. Now let's address ideal health and specifically ideal cardiovascular health. What are the factors that favor this? The four here are having a cholesterol level that is lower than 5.2, having a blood pressure reading that is 120/80, having a glucose reading that is lower than 5.6, meaning that there is no diabetes, and having no cardiovascular disease present. If some of these numbers are a bit foreign to you, they are the common numbers that are addressed with cholesterol, glucose, and blood pressure, and are oftentimes what come up during a blood test, an annual blood test result, or a regular checkup with your doctor. If ever you have specific questions regarding these numbers, you can ask your team of rehabilitation therapists as well as your family doctor with regards to this. Now, how can we achieve this ideal health? The answer is through adopting healthy lifestyle choices and behaviors. Now, these ideal behaviors include being a non-smoker, maintaining a healthy weight, maintaining regular physical activity, and having good eating habits. Now my favorite question of the presentation. Now that we have seen the risk factors and what helps contribute to ideal cardiovascular health, with all that in mind, in your opinion, what is the percentage of the population with an ideal cardiovascular health? Are you thinking more than 50% maybe? Or are you thinking more like 25, 10, 5%? You will be shocked by the answer. I know that I am every time, and sadly, I'm also always disappointed in the number. Yep, 0.1% of the population meets the criteria for ideal cardiovascular health. That is very little. Now let us try and change this number by diving into the advantages and reasons to exercise. So how can exercise help? Essentially, exercise can help reduce your blood pressure, it can help reduce your cholesterol, as well as help with weight control. Now, it is important to keep in mind that whether you had some of these conditions like high blood pressure or a poor cholesterol level before or after your stroke, if you have been prescribed a medication for these conditions, you must keep in mind that exercise does not replace your medication, and therefore you cannot just stop your medication at any time. However, including regular exercise in your daily routine can help reduce the dosage or quantity of medication needed. At this time, please continue to follow any medication plan prescribed to you from your doctor and simply advise your doctor during your next encounter of the physical activity you are or will be doing and discuss if this can have an impact on your medication plan. Only with authorization from your doctor should you make any changes to the medication plan. In addition to helping reduce the chances of developing conditions such as high blood pressure and cholesterol, physical activity can also help increase your overall strength, flexibility, coordination. It can also help increase your endurance, your walking capacities, and your autonomy, as well as increase your self-confidence and your socialization with other individuals. Now, although exercise cannot guarantee that there won't be any setbacks or medical conditions that may come up along your lifelong journey, being active can have a positive effect on the whole person. Okay, so let's take a look at this diagram here, where we have being active at the center of this diagram, and where we have all the bubbles around being the impact that physical activity has on the whole body and on the individual. So starting at the very top, we've seen that physical activity can help decrease the feeling or a sense of isolation. And that is because oftentimes when we exercise, we're either surrounded by other individuals, or we're being instructed by either a coach or a online video, which means we're not alone in the activity. Next, to the right, we know that with physical activity brings new challenges, and what's fun is the sense of accomplishment you get when you overcome these challenges and achieve your goals. Next, we also see that being active helps increase your sleep quality, meaning that if you do physical activity during the day, when it comes to the nighttime, you tend to have a deeper sleep, which results in a more restorative sleep for the next day. The next 2 points touch on the overall global health of the individual, as well as exercise being able to increase the brain's adaptive capacities. Now, this is a point that's very interesting, and what it means is that when you have had a stroke, oftentimes the brain is trying to relearn what it was used to doing before. Now, there is time and time again research showing that physical activity helps through little changes in the brain, called neuroplasticity, that helps actually increase the brain's capacity to relearn what it used to do. That being said, the more physically active you are, the better the chances are that your brain can relearn the level of functioning that you had prior to your stroke. The next bubble touches on mental health. Now, we know that following a stroke, it is a very emotional time, and there are a lot of changes in one's life, and this could include emotions such as sadness, anger, frustration, etc. Some may even experience a form of depression. So we know that through exercise, this helps increase endorphins, so products into the system that help enhance the mood of an individual, as well as helping to increase self-confidence, self-esteem, all of which tie into having a healthy mental state. Now, the last bubble at the top left indicates that being physically active helps reduce the risk of developing a stroke. Now, this is true during 2 periods. It is true during the first period, before you've ever even had a stroke, that being physically active does help reduce your risk of developing a stroke. And it is also true for those who have had a stroke that it helps to reduce your chances of developing a second one. Okay? Now, all this is to say that I'm not a doctor, but I do know that I don't know of one pill or one medication that can offer you as much and as diverse benefits as exercise. So do take advantage of this form and this tool that you have between your hands in order to get the max benefits out of having a physically active lifestyle. Now, we've spoken about the advantages of physical activity, but I do also know that it's not always easy. So let us discuss the barriers to physical activity and some solutions in order to integrate physical activity regularly. For barriers, one of the main complaints we get from patients is winter. Now, we do understand this argument because often our patients have trouble with their balance, or they may use technical aids such as canes or walkers, and they may also be of a certain age, or they simply find it just too cold. And it is true that when it is very cold, it can be unpleasant to exercise, and sometimes if it is too icy, it may even be unsafe to exercise outdoors. However, there are solutions to our cold winters. For one, some may be interested in exploring in outdoorsy type equipment like traction aids for their shoes or cross-country skis, if that is something that allows them to enjoy the outdoors and do exercise. But that's not the majority of our patients. For the majority, we will often recommend exercise alternatives that can be done indoors. We will often suggest using indoor complexes or activities such as shopping malls, grocery stores, museums, etc., to benefit from walking long distances on flat indoor surfaces. However, it is not always feasible to go to these areas, so we know that there needs to be home exercise plans and options available. Now, home exercise is easily done nowadays as there are online platforms such as YouTube, which is loaded with links of different forms of exercises. There are also DVDs or exercise books and just general fitness equipment such as cardiovascular apparatuses like a treadmill. Now, there are exercise routines that don't require any equipment at all, and there are others that can include minimal equipment such as a yoga mat or some resistance bands or some small weights. So it's really up to you what you like and what's available to you in terms of equipment and also space. Next, a second obstacle we often hear about is the fear or dislike of being judged by others. A solution to this is to ensure you are choosing the right environment for you. This can be an environment with individuals who have also had a stroke, such as Aphasie Laval, or it can be in the comfort of your local gym or your home where you are surrounded by individuals who both motivate and encourage you. The third argument and barrier that we often come across with our patients is the aspect and presence of fatigue and pain. Now, following a stroke, it is normal to have decreased energy levels, fatigue, and even pain because the brain suffered a major impact and there are many changes. That being said, the brain needs to relearn how to get through your daily routine, as well as ensuring you have enough energy to do the other activities you would like to do. This is a work in progress and doesn't happen overnight. If this applies to you, you may want to consider customized plans based on your current energy or pain levels and take a progressive approach to meet your goals with time. Quick techniques that can help in this area are dividing up the tasks that you need to do in a day and taking breaks regularly. You don't want to be overexerting yourself to the point that you are too tired to even brush your teeth at night. Last on this slide is communication barriers, and this applies to those individuals who, due to their stroke, may have difficulty expressing themselves or understanding fully, have had some form of aphasia, and so they may feel it is hard for them to exercise and or be understood. However, if this is your case, I encourage you to use the tools that have been shown to you by your speech-language pathologist. Now, this can include communication booklets or electronic platforms or applications to increase communication between you and the other party. And if you do have questions about creating a plan that meets your needs and that you understand, please do ask your rehabilitation team, whether that be in inpatient or in the outpatient program, in order to make sure that you are able to integrate physical activity into your life and in a way that you're understanding. On this next slide, we have barriers that involve transportation, and I will tie this into technical aids because often patients will say that because of their walkers, their canes, their wheelchairs, they have difficulty moving from one place to another. Now, coming back to transportation, in Laval, there is what is called adapted transport. Now, you can verify with your rehabilitation team, if this has not been done already, to see if you are eligible to receive this service, which is free in the Laval area, and it can help facilitate your transport from one place to another in the Laval territory. Additionally, for the individuals who are over 65 and reside in Laval and wish to use regular public transportation, know that it is free to circulate in the Laval territory when you're over 65 years old. Now, lastly, some patients will say that they feel bad asking family or neighbors or friends, but we do encourage our patients and individuals to ask for help if asking for help means that they can then exercise, because the benefits and the advantages that the exercise brings will help them both physically and mentally, and this can also help the relationship or the overall environment that you have with those close ones, whether they are friends or family. Okay? The last thing that we have on this slide is the barrier where patients often say they feel like a burden. Now, this is where we will often encourage our patients to communicate their needs as well as their family's needs with one another, okay, and establish something where both parties can benefit. So perhaps if you feel that exercising and asking for help is you adding an additional strain on someone in your family or a friend, perhaps you can see if doing a certain activity together can be beneficial for both of you. Example, doing your exercise routine while the other person does their own exercise routine. That way, both of you have exercise for the given period of time. Sometimes the biggest challenge is actually just changing the perception that we have about ourselves. Oftentimes, our patients will look towards their incapacities and the difficulties that they're currently facing versus focusing on their actual capacities. If you can focus on your actual capacities, you can focus on what you can do and how to do things differently, and you will be able to overcome a lot more than you can think of. So that being said, let us now take a look at different ways to put an action plan into motion. First and foremost, if you are unsure whether or not you should be exercising, you can always ask and get your doctor's approval, especially if you plan on doing exercise that is of a moderate or high intensity. Next, in helping you devise a plan, you can make a list of physical activities that are accessible to you, whether this be in your household, at some local community centers, or some gym facilities in the area. Write it down. Next, set a realistic goal. So if, for example, just walking around your household, whether it be an apartment or a home, is something that is difficult, perhaps envisioning that the first exercise activity you will choose would be 3-4 hours of shopping is unrealistic. However, if you think that maybe you can set a goal to be able to walk to the end of your street, to do one full block or one turn of the mall, this can be a realistic goal that you can achieve and a goal that you can then modify once it is met in order to create a bigger goal that is now your new objective. Lastly, in helping you devise your action plan, you want to choose an activity that you enjoy. And I can't stress this enough about how important it is. If you choose an activity that you enjoy, you are already more likely to follow through and to continue and maintain a regular exercise routine with that activity. If you already start off by choosing something that you do not like, you will likely stop doing it because you do not enjoy what you are doing. So how can I stay motivated? Oftentimes, we'll recommend that one exercises with friends or in a group in order to have that sense of belonging and be able to depend on one another to make sure that you are showing up and that you are present and exercising regularly. Next, like we mentioned before, it's really important to choose activities that you do enjoy. And lastly, try hard to integrate exercises into your daily routine. So if you already have a busy daily routine, adding another period of exercise might be overwhelming. However, adding simple exercises throughout the day, for instance, after every meal like breakfast, lunch, and supper, you can do things like going up and down the stairs or standing up and sitting down from a chair or the bedside repetitively so that it feels like it's been spread out throughout your routine and throughout your day. Now, here are some suggestions for physical activity. So we have joining a walking club, doing some gardening, doing some water aerobics, swimming. There's Tai Chi or yoga, which can be offered on DVDs or online or even in group classes. You can be walking in a mall. There can be dancing, both sitting and standing forms of dancing. Cycling, once again, both forms like regular cycling or a seated bicycle or bike apparatus. There's golfing. Now, golfing is interesting because you can actually golf yourself, or you can choose to accompany someone either in your family or a friend who's golfing. Because if you walk a whole golf course, that's quite a big distance to cover in terms of walking. You can look into bowling if that's something that interests you. You can also have a light weight training program, whether that be in a gym facility or at home. And there's also wheelchair activities, so adapted training such as seated yoga or seated dance that are all great suggestions and options for including regular physical activity in your lifestyle. Okay, now what about how to pace yourself? So during physical activity, you should always be able to talk a bit. I'm not saying carrying on a full-blown conversation, but you should be able to exchange a few phrases with another individual. Okay, so when exercising, you should feel that your body is warming up, that your muscles are getting warm, that you're pulling a bit of a sweat, but you shouldn't feel completely exhausted. So to help you gauge your intensity and the amount of effort that you are putting in, we often use this scale called the perception of effort scale that you may have already seen during your rehabilitation. But essentially, we are always aiming to perform an exercise activity that aims between the range of 3 to 6. Okay, so for those just starting out, you want to aim for about a 3-4 on 10. And for those who have a bit more experience with exercise and training, you can aim for a 5-6. If, however, you are ever training and you feel that your exercise has brought you over a 6, or you suddenly feel any form of dizziness, an intense shortness of breath, or chest pain with or without any arm pain, you should stop immediately. Okay? Also, if you're feeling that there is critical medical signs here involved, you should consult either your doctor or the emergency if you feel that the situation is critical. This is very important, and it's very important to pace yourself and to keep that scale that we just saw in mind, okay? We do not want to overexert someone and cause a medical emergency. So here we have an example of a training program, and on the left side, it's a training program that was designed during a hospital stay. And on the far right, we have a training program for once you're back home. So it's only normal that when we look at the frequency, we see that we're aiming to go for 5 times a week in terms of exercise, and that the warm-up ranges from 5 to 10 minutes, meaning that maybe during your hospital stay, you were first starting out, the stroke was more recent, so you can start off lighter in 5-minute warm-up. But with time, you can try to increase your warm-up to 10 minutes. Now, warm-up means that you have light exercises. Now, these can be some exercises you're doing in your bed or lying down, or just some light stretches and standing, okay? Nothing too intense. So that after, when you enter your training phase, you can choose an activity and setting that you like, and that's when you increase your intensity to the area on the scale that ranges from 3 to 5 if you're just starting out, or it can go all the way up until 6 if you're more experienced with the training. In terms of duration, at first we want to aim for 3 periods of 5 minutes, okay? And as you get more experience, you can bring up the length of your exercise session to 20 to 30 minutes long. And always keep in mind to end with a period of a cool down, and this should be roughly 5 to 10 minutes, where you slow down the intensity of the exercises that you're doing in order to slow down the heart rate and your entire body before coming to a complete rest. So we're approaching the end of the presentation here. Just before ending, we do have a short video for you to listen to. It is in French, but it does provide an overall summary of the points that we have been discussing throughout the entire presentation. And it also gives you a perspective of patients who have had a stroke and their opinion and feedback with regards to exercise following their stroke. Okay, I do recommend that you decrease the volume levels as the video tends to be louder than the entire presentation. Okay, enjoy the video.
Mais par la suite, après quelques mois de réadaptation, le cerveau continue encore à refaire des connexions et donc la personne qui va continuer d'utiliser des stratégies, de s'exposer à des nouvelles situations, va en tirer bénéfice.
Alors, je t'appelais pour qu'on jase un peu de la marche de la semaine prochaine. Moi, je me suis senti à Lucie Bruno comme c'était à la polyvalente. Tu as des amis, tu te ramasses à la cafétéria après pour aller prendre un café, jaser, avoir du fun un peu. Là, à un moment donné, un matin, on te dit, garde, c'est fini, on déploie, ton dossier est cassé, tu t'en vas chez vous, tu n'en as plus de rendez-vous, tu t'en vas plus nulle part à 9h. Fait que qu'est-ce que je fais à 9h le matin?
Le fait que soit sorti de l'institution, il y a des nouveaux objectifs qui apparaissent. J'appelle ça des objectifs de la vraie vie. Et il faut que tu sois sorti de la réadaptation active pour ça. Il faut que tu sois trempé dans la vraie vie pour voir qu'est-ce que j'aimerais faire et qu'est-ce que je suis capable avec les difficultés que j'ai. Et là, quelquefois, on les dépasse, ces difficultés-là.
Ce matin, on va faire le tracé de la piste cyclable qui débute à l'est de Delormier, d'Iberville et qui se rend jusqu'à Christophe-Colomb.
Comme la réadaptation, c'est toute la vie, la réadaptation s'adapte au stade d'évolution du patient. Et l'objectif ultime, c'est d'être capable avoir du plaisir, avoir des activités qu'on aime, retrouver les gens qu'on aime. Donc, l'objectif ultime de la réadaptation, c'est la qualité de la vie.
Alors, bonne journée. Il fait beau, vous êtes bon, on est un gros groupe, alors on va partir.
3,7 km.
L'Axon, c'est un groupe de loisirs après AVC. On a fondé ça parce que quand on a fini notre réadaptation, on a dit, t'as fini, tu t'en vas chez vous, il n'y a plus rien. Alors nous, on s'est dit, je pense qu'il y a un intérêt pour continuer à faire des choses, de l'activité physique, avoir une espèce de réseau social.
Le fait de recommencer des activités physiques, de recommencer des activités en société, c'est vraiment très important. C'est une stimulation cognitive et physique, c'est de la réadaptation. Et vous savez, les patients n'ont pas de limite. Nos patients se dépassent chacun dans leur domaine et on est toujours surpris de voir quelle nouvelle activité ont fait nos patients.
Actuellement, on a deux activités principales. C'est la marche suivie d'un dîner de l'amitié le mardi et un tour de conditionnement musique le jeudi midi. Ça brise l'isolement, ça crée des liens. On est un groupe d'amis maintenant. Quand on peut pas venir pendant une semaine ou deux, on s'ennuie de ça. On s'en va, on traverse Port-Laurier, puis on est rentré.
Au-delà du processus de réadaptation, bien entendu, il y a la famille qui prend une importance, qui peut nourrir la motivation de la personne, mais pas juste la famille, ça dépasse ce cadre-là. C'est important pour la personne de maintenir des liens en général avec des amis, avec sa communauté, de se joindre à des groupes de soutien, et ça peut apporter un gros ouf à la personne pour continuer à sentir partie prenante de la société.
L'Axon va aller chez vous préparer vos repas.
On est tous dans le même bateau, c'est-à-dire qu'on réussit à dédramatiser. Donc, ça, parce qu'on connaît exactement ce que l'autre personne a eu. Et ça permet aussi des échanges à un niveau, je dirais, plus émotif, quelquefois. Un simple coup d'œil suffit et on comprend ce que l'autre personne vit. Il n'y a pas de jugement, de performance, on n'est pas là. On est là pour être là.
Hey, bonne santé, les amis!
Oui,
C'est démontré scientifiquement, Georges. L'exercice permet de mieux récupérer d'un AVC.
Oui, on parle ici d'une méta-analyse qui a été publiée au mois d'octobre et qui comparait l'efficacité d'un programme d'exercice versus les médicaments qu'on donne couramment dans des cas comme ça pour aider à la récupération de conditions comme par exemple l'infarctus et l'AVC.
Et les conclusions sont plutôt étonnantes. Ce qu'on dit, c'est que l'exercice est dans certains cas plus efficace même que les médicaments.
Exactement. Dans le cas des infarctus, l'exercice est équivalent au traitement pharmacologique et pour la récupération et la prévention d'AVC, l'exercice est supérieur. Donc, ça demande beaucoup de motivation, ça demande une mobilisation de l'entourage. C'est pas évident.
C'est vraiment tout un défi, là, tant sur le plan physique que le plan psychologique. Et il y a un facteur qui n'est pas négligé, c'est que beaucoup de gens qui ont été victimes d'un AVC vont souffrir de dépression, de troubles.
Okay, I hope that you enjoyed that short video